Hello, community. Welcome. My name is Catherine Jura. I am a community health educator, and I am your host for this podcast. I created Hello Community in response to the current epidemic that is being reported across the globe and in the United States of social isolation and loneliness. In the United States, 1 out of every 2 people say that they are lonely. And prolonged loneliness can lead to physical and emotional illness, can make chronic illnesses worse, and can lead to early death. The good news is that social connection and community building are the healing effects for this epidemic. Through this podcast, I will be interviewing a diverse group of individuals who have built social connections and community for themselves, often against great odds. My hope is that at the end of the podcast, that you will go away with some ideas of how to grow social connection and community in your own life. So I'd like you to meet my guest for today, which is Shameka Andrews. Welcome.
Thank you.
Shameka and I met 9 years ago working at the Independent Living Center, and we've met after that also. And when I was thinking about who to have as my next guest, I was thinking about our commitment to diversity, and I thought about Shameka. Shameka's current position is Community Outreach for the Self-Advocacy Association of New York, and her own business, Disability Empowered Consulting, which works with self-advocacy, self-care, and disability awareness. So, Shameka, you shared in our pre-interview yesterday that your journey to this place of having social connection and community has been a very determined journey for you and came out of social isolation and loneliness, and that you wanted to share that with our audience. So.
Yes, definitely. So I grew up in Albany. I've lived here most of my life. I was raised by my mom and my stepdad, and I have 3 siblings. I'm the only one who has a disability, and I'm the oldest. And growing up in the neighborhood that we lived in, we didn't have the accessibility. So I was very isolated. We didn't have accessible buses. We didn't have, curb cuts and all of the things that my neighborhood has now. So I, had to get assistance getting around, and from my siblings and my mom and things like that. So I wasn't as active in the community as I am now, and I only left the house pretty much primarily when I needed to go to school. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I was in my room with my books. As I was telling you, that was my outlet. Growing up, I loved to read and learn, and that was kind of my outlet of traveling through my mind, because I wasn't able to travel physically at the time, and I didn't have a lot of control of where I could be or anything at that time. So I traveled through books, and I connected with the stories that I read about and the people that I read about. So that was, for me, how things got started. And obviously, being in an accessible, house and neighborhood is very isolating. And so I didn't have a lot of friends. I had some friends at school, but I didn't go to school in my neighborhood because I needed therapies, and the schools in my neighborhood at the time didn't have those available. So I went to school, an hour or so away from my neighborhood. So, the people that I hung out with during the day, they didn't live like close by, so we didn't, do stuff after school or, things like that, that most kids do, they play with their friends after school or, go to school functions and things like that. I didn't do a lot of those things because of where I needed to go to school and get the services that I needed, like therapies and that sort of thing.
So then what started to change that for you?
Really, school and my teachers at school. My love of reading came from my English teacher. Her name was Mrs. Lydon. And part of what she would do, she loved to read. And she would come into the school and to the class, and she'd give us these like reading lists. So that was a way that we could get extra credit in the class. And she made up all of these tests of books that she read. And so if we wanted to get extra credit, more books we read. So I loved that. So that's how I really, that was kind of my adventures through books. And I loved to read, at the time I loved to read, Danielle Steele romance novels and Mary Higgins Clark mysteries and all of these different things like that. And as time went on, I, started reading more, spiritual self-help type of books, with like Joyce Meyer and, going to a lot of her events and things like that, and then learning about, people like Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay, who I had the pleasure of meeting before they departed this earth, and learning about different modalities and things like that to help me deal with the loneliness and the depression and the things that I was feeling being so isolated. Learning about things like meditation and affirmations and gratitude and gratitude journals. And, that's what also when I started, my first gratitude journal. And I've kept gratitude journals ever since then. And I always love to kind of look back at what I was writing at the time versus where I am now, and I shared with you, one of my favorite things that I do at the end of each day is I look at what are at least 5 things I love about the day. And this started out as something I just did for myself. And then, this thing called social media came along, and I started to share these things online and said, this is a tool that worked for me, and I just want to share it with you. And every once in a while, people will say, I think I'm going to do that, or some version of that, and they'll share with me, their 5 favorite things, or the thing that they're grateful for that day, which always makes me happy.
So the learning, it sounds like you're saying the books, in addition to initially being a little escape, now you were learning from the books of ways to deal with, like you shared, your social isolation, your depression. And then you started moving into social media. Did that start to impact the isolation factor?
Yeah, as I got older, one of the things that did help me, while I was still living in the neighborhood is eventually I learned to ride the bus. So that helped with the isolation, and I learned how to navigate the bus. So that gave me a little bit of an outlet. I spent lots of time in, libraries and things like that. So again, that helped with that connection, being able to connect with people through books and through reading. And yeah, so, having the outlet of the bus and, that accessibility helped to, combat, that sense of loneliness and isolation. And of course, it still was, came up for me, but it wasn't as intense as it was at sometimes. So that definitely helped.
And was the life you were creating on social media, the connections you were creating on social media, creating connections?
Yes, definitely. Social media was, I know people say there's lots of bad things on social media and there's lots of, but I have made some really great connections on social media. I've done, not only personally but professionally, I've done whole projects with groups of people that I met through social media. When I first started out on social media, I met this group. It was a women's group, and it was a group of women authors, and they all wanted to get together and write a book. But we were all over the country, and we wrote this book together. And I've done that twice through social media. That first time I did a little endorsement of the book because I didn't know a lot about that. So you can probably still find it on Amazon, but it was called The Empowered Women of Social Media. And so we did that book. So you can probably still find it on Amazon.
The Empowered Women of Social Media. Okay.
Yeah. So you can probably still find it. And then there was a second group of women that I found on social media that did another book project. A local woman that I had met, she was gathering these women from all over the country and that were sharing their transformation stories or their, how they went through challenge. And it's called Behind the Smile, 15 Women Who Survived the Storm. So, and also available on Amazon. And it's filled with stories of, women that dealt with a challenge, whether it was a physical challenge or a family challenge or whatever, and how they got through it, or how I should say we, because I was part of it. And my chapter in the book, it's called "Okay to Be Me," because that's my journey of, the thing about trying to be in the community and trying to belong and find belonging and find community, is sometimes you lose who you are. And trying to be who somebody else wants you to be, or what you feel that you need to be in order to belong to whatever the group is that you're trying to fit into, especially when you're young and growing up and things like that. But adults do it too. So anyways, that's what it's called.
Maybe repeat it for our listeners. Behind the Smile.
Yes, it's called Behind the Smile, 15 Women Who Survived the Storm.
15 Women Who Survived the Storm. All right.
Yeah. And so that's what I talk about in that book, of my journey of, faith, of my spiritual, what helped me to get, through those storms, was believing that in something that was, bigger than me, believing that there's more to what's happening right now in my life circumstance, whatever. There's more out there for me. There's more, the world is full, even though the world is full of bad things, the world is full of love and abundance and all of these things. And that's how I held on to those beliefs and belief in my faith, to get me through those things and continue to get, because I'm still here. So
yes. So far in your story, so are we hearing you say that it was like building a tapestry, like social media was some threads in your tapestry. Getting on the bus and getting out were more pieces in your tapestry, a building community. If we were to, if you like that imagery, that your community is a tapestry, and your tapestry is made of social media connections, getting on the bus and getting out connections, and now you're bringing in your spirituality. So how does spirituality, there's something very concrete about sharing on social media, being in Zoom meetings, being in groups, getting on the bus, getting out, living in a place where there are other folks like yourself. Spirituality is kind of ethereal. So how has that helped you? How does that help you?
It helps me, with building connections, and like I said, having something that I believe in when, I'm having those crappy days, and believing that, I didn't get here by myself. So, I've been through a lot, and so the spirituality, the piece of, connection, that was part of how I built connections. I was working, when I started working at the Self-Advocacy Association, because I've worked there, as I explained to you yesterday, for many years. So I started there in 2006 in their AmeriCorps project. But one of the guys that worked there at the time, he actually introduced me to his church at the time, and then it became my church because I went to visit and I really liked it, which is Unity Church. And so I made those connections there, and I still, and again, with social media and technology, and when we got to a point where things were shutting down because of COVID and things like that, they brought their services on Zoom, on YouTube, things like that, and had Zoom groups where we could how after service we would have a coffee hour in person, because you couldn't do that during COVID. So they brought the coffee hour on Zoom. So after the service, which was on YouTube and still on YouTube, you still can watch it on YouTube, and we would have, the coffee hour on Zoom with all people that attended, whether you attended in online or in person, you could get on Zoom and chat with people and connect with people, and, talk about how you enjoyed the service or what's going on in your life. And, so it was part of how I built connections. I think I've been very lucky, because I have been able to connect with so many different types of people and groups of people. I'm, obviously a person with a disability and a person of color, who are groups that I connect with on a regular basis. But, I'm just, connect with people, within my community. What's going on in the community. You see people at the post office, you see, and people know me. Sometimes I think I know way too many people, but that's another topic for another day. But
may I ask, the community you're now talking about is where you physically live community?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, because I've built community in person, and I've built community online, which is hard for people to understand sometimes, because you're not physically with somebody, because some people need that, that physical, like we're here together in this room together. But a lot of the people that I'm connected with and have been connected with for many years, I've never physically been in a room with those people. But to me, it feels no different. Yeah. We, like I was explaining to you, when, COVID happened and we were in the thick of it and everybody was shut down and in our homes and, not working or whatever. I connected with a group online that was started by a woman who lives in California, who again, I've never met in person. Mm-hmm. And she took a group that she was doing in person in California and brought it on Zoom. And that group, we started out, it was one dance class. And it was 9 people the first time that I joined. And now that group, and we got together every Saturday, every Saturday for a long time. And then we said to each other, it's like, I really like you guys, and we want to hang out more. And there were many years where we were online together almost every single day. And to us, it was no different than I'm talking to you right now, even though we were miles away. We have people in that group. She's from California. I'm from New York. We have people from Alaska. We have people from South Africa. We have people from Canada. We have people from Poland. And there's all different kinds of things going on in the world. We have one girl who's from Poland, and all of the things that are happening over there and have happened, and Ukraine and all of these things. So we're hearing about these things, how she's experiencing them, bombings and all of these different things, that maybe we don't necessarily need to deal with here. Firsthand from her, because she's living that. And that's, just like you would get together with a group of friends if you're having a challenge, that's what we do for each other. We celebrate holidays together. We celebrate, my favorite thing that we do together is our New Year's party. Because we have people from all over the world. We celebrate New Year's in every time zone.
Interesting.
So we start out in New York in the Eastern time zone, because we're usually first. And not to mention the fact that the next day is my birthday, but that's, aside. So we start out and we have like a little talent show. Does anybody want to, share their talent? Some people sing and some people share jokes, or we dance and we listen to music. Sometimes we watch movies. But we always say, okay, who's gonna make it through to every time zone? Because we start in New York and we end in Alaska. And the guy in Alaska, how we wrap up is he gives us, and this is kind of cool too, is people are familiar with fortune cookies, right? So there's a website where you can get electronic fortune cookies. So he does a fortune cookie for every single person that's left, and that's how we end the night or the day. It ends up being the day, because Alaska, it's like, I think it's like 4:30 in the morning here by the time we're done. So, and it's like a big party and big celebration. And like I said, and because the next day, last year, because I turned 46, they all got together and they sent me this platter sample of birthday cake. So I had like all of these different birthday cakes from all of them. For my 46th birthday, which was really awesome. And we do, like I said, we do Christmas together, and we do, because we have people that are Jewish, we do Hanukkah celebrations, and we get to learn about their, everybody's different traditions, woman from California who lives in California. She started it, but her family's from Mexico originally, so we have learned a lot about traditions there and things like that. So it's like we're one big happy family, even though most of us have never been in the same room together.
And how long has this connection, this building community been going on?
It's almost 5 years.
5 years. So, you had mentioned earlier that social media can get a lot of press, that it can end up being isolating for people, playing games, it can be detrimental, comparing ourselves to other people. You're using social media, it sounds like, in a very different way.
Yes.
Consciously to build community.
Yes.
And connection.
Yes, and like I was sharing with you yesterday, that's how I started out, with social media. Because for me, what's important to me is that people have access to information that can help them deal with whatever they're dealing with in their lives. Mm-hmm. So that's for me why I started at social media, because I knew in my life at the time I was going to all these conferences and different things, and I was, me at the Independent Living Center, and I was learning about health and wellness and all of these different programs, and I knew that a lot of the people that I was talking to every day outside of that didn't have access to those things. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to use my social media to share this information, to give this information to people that may not have it. So that's how I started out of my social media. So I had several pages at the time until I learned that I can put them all on one and it didn't need to have 1 million pages. But anyway, I would go to a conference and go to an event and say, okay, well, this is what I learned. And I think that this is important to you. Are you looking for housing? Are you looking for employment or whatever? So that's what I do. So I think it's and that's, you brought that up, is being intentional. You really have to be intentional with your time and your space. I mentioned earlier that, quotes and different things are really important to me. Like I have them on my phone. I have so it's feeding my mind. And that's, for me, the spiritual piece of what are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding your body? To me, that's all part of my, spiritual connections and spiritual practices, is really being intentional about my space. Because I know for me, I was more wrapped up in how do I get other people to stay around, and I was building community in a negative way, and not being around people because I wanted to be around people whether they were good for me or not.
Ah, really important. Thank you for sharing that.
So I learned, it's about, and reading, learning about, everything is energy. People have energy, food has energy, everything has energy. And so one of my favorite quotes, the point of bringing all of that up, is one of my favorite quotes, and I have this in my house and in my workspace. It's a quote by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, and it says, "Please be responsible for the energy that you bring into this space."
Wow. Would you say that again for our listeners?
Sure. It's a quote by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, and it says, "Please be responsible for the energy that you bring into this space." And I have that sign in my home space and in my workspace.
And what does that mean tangibly?
To me, it's a reminder to myself that I need to, if I feel that your energy is negative, that means that I need to create a boundary. Okay? And not allow whatever negativity come to me, but it's also because the people that are coming into the space also see it. So in my hopes, having it there is when you come into the space, you're thinking about, well, what does that mean for me?
Oh, even just to spur the question within each person who sees the sign.
Right, exactly.
Ah.
So it's my hope is, but it's definitely a reminder to me, even if you're not thinking about it. I'm thinking about, okay, you're here in my physical space. What is the vibe I'm getting from you? Is it a good vibe? Are you a uplifting person? Are you, filling up the energy and bringing up the energy, or are you zapping the energy?
Mm-hmm. And what do you do with the answer?
Well, again, if you're an energy zapper, that means that we need some boundaries.
Okay, boundaries.
And that, again, that's has been part of my learning for me in building community, is knowing that boundaries are important. That every relationship needs boundaries.
Interesting point.
Yes. And
that social connection and community doesn't mean everybody's welcome.
Right, exactly.
There needs to be some discernment.
Right, exactly. Because yes, we all want friends, we all want connections, but everybody doesn't get access to me 24 hours a day. That's the other thing about boundaries. We all have these different devices and things now, and phones and whatever. There was a period of time was, okay, well, if I didn't answer my phone for you, your life is going to fall apart or something, and it's like, you've been doing fine without me, so you'll be fine until tomorrow. It's okay.
That's the way to take care of yourself.
And
yeah.
So, and like I said, unfortunately, like many people, I had to do the not so good thing before I learned that, okay, the good thing. So that's it. And especially, when it comes to people that I love, right? Because that was the hardest for me, is, okay, well, I love you and I want to do something with you, and maybe we're related, or maybe you're family or whatever, and I want to take care of you and make sure you're okay and whatever, but that's not my responsibility, and that's not why I'm here. So I'm going to let you be an adult and do whatever you need to do, and because that can be hard too, is,
for sure.
You see loved ones going through things, and we want to fix it and we want to take care of it, but they have their journey just like we have our journey. So that's part of the boundaries for me, is like, because I wanted to drop everything and whatever, and give up everything because you're going through whatever it is you're going through. But it's not my job to fix whatever is happening to you.
When we were talking about spirituality, and I was saying, well, social media is very concrete. Going out into the community on the bus or to conferences is very concrete, and spirituality is very ethereal. I want to apologize for that, assuming that was your definition. That's my definition. For me, my spirituality is very ethereal. It's everywhere. Well, this is about you. So I apologize for assuming that, because what I then heard you go on to say, and would you be willing to just share a little more here, perhaps in closing, that your spirituality is very concrete. It isn't necessarily like prayer. Meditation can be, right?
Yeah,
but very concrete also.
Yes, for me it is, and for many people, when you say spirituality or you say religion, it looks like you said. It looks like I pray a certain time. And then there's nothing wrong with any of those things.
Yes.
But this may, it's not my intention to offend anybody, but for me, it's my connection of what I see as God. And God is with me everywhere. He's with me whether I'm sitting in a church, or whether I'm sitting in my living room, or on a plane to Vegas. He's still with me at all times. And that's what I believe. And for me, it doesn't look like one thing. It's everything, spiritual connection. I can get spiritual connection looking at these beautiful trees that are out here outside the building and sitting in the park, or, looking at all of this wonderfulness that God has, for me, that's my belief,
Yes.
created. Or I can go to a church service and get that connection, that spiritual connection in that way. All of it is, or I can sit, in my living room and listen to Bon Jovi. So to me, that it's all of those things of connecting with the abundance of life, whether it's through music, whether it's through prayer, meditation, whatever it is, just the abundance and connecting, and that's, yes, to me, that's very tangible. It may not look the way somebody else's, and that's what makes the world go round, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all different. Some people feel that they need to do it a certain way and do it this way and whatever, and that works for them. And this is what it means to me and how I connect.
So, in closing, I always offer my guest an opportunity. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to share with our listeners in closing?
Well, I think one of the things, it didn't come up, in our conversations because there's just so much I could talk about. But I think one of the most important things for me with dealing with isolation and loneliness, that a lot of people have a very hard time with, and that's asking for help and seeking out professional help and counseling and therapy, which were a very, very, and continue to be a very important part of my life. And one of the things that I always say is, often, especially for people with disabilities, we talk about being independent or independence, and I gotta be independent, I gotta do stuff on my own. And as long as you are here on God's green earth, you're not gonna do everything alone. And we need each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and saying, I need help, I need you, I need me. And so I think that is really the important piece of how, people can, deal with, loneliness and isolation. First, admitting that you need help, and then asking for it and accepting it.
Thank you so much. What a wealth of life experience. This did not happen overnight. This was decades of work for you.
That's it's really, I mentioned my birthday earlier, but which is New Year's Day. So it's coming up not too far away, and I will be 47. Just to share what my birthday is, which again is God's blessings on my earth, because there were many professionals and doctors and things that said I would not live past the age of 5. So, and I'm still here, and I'm grateful, and I know that, and that's how I hold on to my faith and my beliefs, is the fact that I am here is a miracle. And knowing that I am here because I have a purpose, and He has a purpose for me.
You have a purpose.
And so that is what sustains me.
So would you like to share with our listeners any way that they might get a hold of you?
Yes, definitely. Since we've been speaking of social media, I'm on Facebook. You search Shameka Andrews on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as Disability Empowered, which is my business name. I'm on LinkedIn if you're a business person and want to reach out that way. I also have a YouTube channel, which is just Shameka Andrews, which you can reach out and just email. And my if you do email, my email is disabilityempowered, again, my business name, at gmail.com. So all the ways. I love hearing from people and connecting with people in that way. Yeah. So.
Shameka, will you spell your name for those folks that are listening?
Absolutely. So my name is Shameka Andrews, and my first name is spelled Shameka, and my last name is Andrews, which is Andrews. So yeah, so you can find me, even Google. Sometimes I Google myself, which is kind of funny, but if you just spell that out just the way I did and Google me, you'll find me.
You'll start to find you. Yeah. Sometimes Google picks up on spelling, but some not. And there's a lot of people with the same names out there.
Right.
So we want folks to find you.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you so much. And if you would like additional online support in addition to Shameka's online support, please do check out Project Unlonely, started by Dr. Jeremy Nobel, a physician. It's a fabulous website full of lots of information. They do fantastic, very short videos that are very inspiring. It is a world unto itself. Project Unlonely. Check that out. And if you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe, and then you will be notified when we have a new episode. And please share this with others so that together, let's support each other to lives of social connection and community. Till next time. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional or mental health provider for any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern.